What's up, guys? Welcome back to Veteran Aquatics. My name is Dylan, and today we're going to be collecting driftwood and rocks for my aquariums, and we're going to do this outside along the banks of the river. I just wanted to make this video to show you how to tell if something is aquarium safe, and once you collect it, how to make it aquarium safe. So make sure to hit that like button, make sure to smash the subscribe button, and I'll see you in a minute. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to start with the rocks. So most rivers have something like this where there's a shallow inlet, where it's just rocks everywhere. Right? But you can't just take a rock and stick it in your aquarium. One, it has to be the right kind of rock, and two, you have to prepare it. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to make sure it's the right type of rock. Alright, so I've assembled a couple of rocks here, some rocks that might look nice. The red rock is really cool looking. There's the darker rock and the lighter rock. So one way to tell if it's going to be aquarium safe, some of these rocks will change the pH of your water or change the hardness of your water depending on what they're made of. So some things to avoid. One, a rock like this. You can see, maybe not so much now, but when it's in the sun, it's got little sparkles to it. That means there are minerals in the rock, and that will leach into your water. The next thing is you have to check to make sure what kind of rock it is, and we do this with a hardness test. I have a key, so what you do is you just take the key, and not too hard, but see if you can leave a mark. If you can leave a mark, the rock is not very hard, and it means it will dissolve things like calcium into your water. It can also change the hardness of your water. Now we look at a rock like this, where we do the same thing, right, and it's still scratching. We look at this rock, still scratching, and then we look at this rock. A very light scratch, and last, you look at that rock, barely any mark at all. So out of all these rocks, this would be the most aquarium safe one. So we're just going to go around, we're going to find some rocks that we like, we're going to do the hardness test on them, and when I get some rocks together and I get back to the house, I'll show you guys what we do to further test them to make sure they're okay. So we're going to move on to driftwood. So I was walking through and I see all these pieces of wood that when the river flooded, they all got caught on these trees here. Now, how do you know if you can use the driftwood? Well, for starters, you want to make sure it's something like this, where all the bark is peeled off, but the tree's not soft, right? Try to dig your nail into it. If it goes in and you can easily scrape stuff off, the wood's rotten and it's just going to deteriorate that much faster in your tank. So I like this piece. It's got this cool little root system down here, so I'll probably take the chainsaw and cut it off up here or something like that, just to have the roots out. But you also want to make sure it's a hardwood. So you can't use things like pine or hemlock, because what they'll end up doing is leaching that sap into your tank. Now, almost all driftwood will leach tannins into your tank, so it's a good idea to soak it for a while before you try putting it in your tank. Alright, so I can't dig my nail into this. This is in fact hardwood. If you don't know much about trees, you can look in the center there. If it was pine or something like that, it'd be a lot stringier, but you can see it's pretty not stringy, right? If that makes sense. So I'm going to keep this piece. Like I said, I'll probably take the chainsaw and hack the long part off of it, but I'll show you how to prepare that as well once we get home. I really need to get a pair of hip waders or rain boots or something for when I'm doing this, because walking along this little creek here, my feet are getting soaked. But it is a really nice day outside, which is why I decided to make this video. I just figured, since it's a DIY channel, I could show you guys how I DIY rocks and driftwood. I wish I had my chainsaw. I'd take the whole stump. This is awesome. I know some of you with your bigger monster tanks would love to just hack this thing off at the stump and stick that in your tank. I gotta say, this is actually really fun. So a lot of us, we look at things like driftwood and some really cool rocks, and we're like, man, I wish I had that, but driftwood's so expensive. It's not if you just go find it, right? So I've been out here for 15 minutes maybe digging around in this brush, and I have quite a few. So here's a few of the pieces that I'm gonna end up taking home. Now, they don't necessarily have as much character as I would like, but this one is pretty cool. Alright, so I've got a bucket full of rocks and all these pieces of driftwood. Man, I really love this piece. It's going to look awesome. So I'm going to take all this back to my car, we're going to go back to the house, and I'll show you guys how to prepare them. Now make sure that you let your rocks and the driftwood dry for at least 24 hours after you remove it from the bleach solution. You want all the bleach to evaporate off of the rocks and off of the driftwood. You don't want that in your tank. It will instantly kill your fish and any of the other inhabitants in your tank. So like I said, just let them dry out in the sun if possible. If not, I have a covered porch back there that I use to dry my stuff. So you can use that to let it dry out. Once it's all dry, then we're going to move on to the next step. So step number 1 is to pressure wash the bejesus out of them. If you don't have a pressure washer, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way with a scrub brush and a bucket of water. What we're doing is just removing all the debris, all the dirt and stuff like that that's on the wood and the rocks. Now the next part for the rocks, you actually have a couple of options. You can boil them, which we have non-stick cookware, so I'm not allowed, and some of these rocks are too big to fit in the pots. Or you can put the rocks in a bucket of water with a solution that is 10 parts water, 1 part bleach, right? So you just let them soak in here for about 24 hours. When we take them out next, we're going to go ahead and pressure wash them off one more time, and then they'll be good to go. Then you can just stick them in your aquarium, scape it the way you like. I got some nice big rocks, some big flat rocks, some big chunky rocks, so they'll provide a really nice hardscape for my tank. Something I did not mention earlier, you need to test and see if the rock has an overabundance of calcium in it. So to do that, you can just take some regular white vinegar, pour it on the rock. If it fizzes, don't use the rock because it's got too much calcium in it. It's going to mess with your water quality and with your mineral levels and things like that. If it doesn't fizz, you're good to go. Make sure you do the key test again to test the hardness and stuff like that. Don't use rocks that are shiny or glittery or have any kind of sparkle to them because they do have minerals in them and you don't want that stuff in your tank. So the next step for the wood is to take your handy dandy chainsaw and cut it to size. So when I picked the one piece up, I told you guys I wanted to cut it. And there you go. I've cut it down to the size that I want. Gave this one a little trim as well. So what we're going to do next for this is we're going to take something like steel wool and we're going to scrub it down, get any other debris off of it. And once we're done with that, then we're going to want to spray the wood down with a mixture of vinegar, so white vinegar, hydrogen peroxide, and water. You can just use it in a spray bottle. Alright, after you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and pressure wash the bejesus out of it one more time, and then you're ready to soak it. So we're going to soak this again, 10 parts water, 1 part bleach, and we're going to let this soak for probably 20 minutes. After that, we can take it out, spray it off, and then I like to keep the driftwood. I have a 55-gallon that I resealed, so I'll probably stick it in that tank, fill that tank up with water, and just kind of let it soak. That way it's nice and waterlogged when I'm ready to put it in the tank. So I'm just using the wheelbarrow for now just to kind of soak it for a little while. I will rotate the pieces so that way everything comes in contact with the solution and we don't have any problems in the future putting the stuff in our tank. If you don't follow the steps, if you don't sanitize the wood, if you don't sanitize the rocks, you really run the risk of getting microscopic bacteria and microbes and bugs and just things that don't belong in a fish tank. The only exception to when this might not be necessary is if you're doing a native tank. So if you live in Pennsylvania like I do and you wanted to go catch a grass pickerel or a red pickerel and put that in a 125-gallon tank, You could theoretically just take this stuff, rinse it off really well, and stick it in a tank, because those fish are used to the things that are already in the water system, right? But for things like cichlids or other tropical fish, they're not used to this stuff. It's not native for them. So you want to make sure that you take the time and really, really clean it well. Now, another alternative to soaking it in the bleach solution is you can bake it. So you would bake it for, depending on the size of the wood, I'd say 2 to 6 hours at 200 to 215 degrees. Now these pieces are all pretty big. Maybe one of them would fit in my oven, but I'm not going to run my oven that long just for this. I'm already soaking the rest of it. I may as well soak that as well. So that is another option that you have. If you have a huge pot and a not so huge piece of driftwood, you also have the option of boiling the driftwood just like you do the rocks. So boil it 10 to 15 minutes and you're good to go. Alright, so that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this helped you out like it helped me out when I learned about it. You know, driftwood and rocks are expensive, so anytime we have the option to get them for free or for a little bit of work, it's much better to do so. I do have to say, make sure you check your state's local laws regarding this. So in the state of Pennsylvania, it is legal to do so. In some states, it is not, right? You can't just go down to the river and take rocks and wood away from its natural habitat and bring it home. Same thing with fish. So make sure you check your local laws, make sure you're following the rules of your state and the governing bodies. You don't want to get in trouble over trying to save 40, 50 bucks on a piece of driftwood. All right, that's it, guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.